In this video, the ultimate guide to beach cities in Mexico. Mexico is home to more beach cities than you probably realize. Everyone talks about Los Cabos, everyone talks about Vallarta, but Mexico has an enormous amount of coastline, and if you want to live on the beach affordably or as a baller, Mexico has more beach city options for you than you probably realize. Now, all these cities on the Mexican coast, on the Pacific side, the Gulf side, everywhere, they all have very different vibes, right? And so in this video, Ultimate Guide, we're gonna go through your beach city options one by one so that you kind of understand the vibe of these different cities, the characteristics, and decide if this is maybe a place that you would want to spend time, that you would want to check out if it matches with your goals. So let's kick it off without further ado. Most people would probably start this list on Baja California or on the Pacific side. We're going to switch things up today. We're going to start our list in the Gulf of Mexico because it's just not talked about enough. I think this whole stretch of the Gulf of Mexico is really underrated for the American traveler. They just don't know anything about it, even though, you know, it shares a bay with Louisiana and Texas and all that. And by the way, if you were curious where the SpaceX launch facility is, it's in Boca Chica, Texas, right near the border. Okay, so using the SpaceX facility as kind of the marker of the southern tip of the USA on the border with Texas, we'll start making our way into Mexico. And funny enough, the first point here in Mexico is called Faro Baghdad, which is Baghdad Lighthouse. And then you come down here and there's Playa Recreativo Baghdad. So just kind of funny, we got SpaceX and Baghdad side by side. Okay, anyway, moving on. Let's get into our cities. So the first city of any significant note in our Mexican beach city list is Tampico. So this is a really modern city that really has taken a lot of inspiration from the US. And there's even this area of the historic downtown that looks like Louisiana. It has that same architectural style with the balconies. How can I find it? And then the other cool thing about this city is it's really on the beach. So it has a port, one of the biggest ports on the Gulf of Mexico, and then it also just has a big stretch of beach line. So it is really a beachfront city in that sense. Has history, has an economy, and has really good meat and seafood as well. Tons of inspiration in terms of seafood. And then the meat's good too, because this is northern Mexico and they take the meat seriously there. So the asado and all that stuff. So that's Tampico. I think it's a very underrated city on the beach. And let's start moving down the coast a little bit. So the next city is Tuxpan, very small, one of the closest beaches to Mexico City in a drive. And then the next city of any note is Veracruz. So this is the port of Veracruz, one of the most historic cities in Mexico. This is where Hernan Cortés came in from Spain by way of Cuba to take over Mexico, and he actually walked from Veracruz through Jalapa down into Puebla and Tlaxcala, and then conquered Mexico City from there. But anyway, so this is the port of Veracruz City. It's a very big port, so the beaches really close to the city are quite dirty. But if you come down to this area called Boca del Rio, this beach is very swimmable. Nice area, big malls, museums, stores, all that stuff. So Veracruz, very warm, humid city, especially in the summer months. So time your visit carefully. But it's a cool city with a lot of culture, music culture, islands. Really kind of has that sort of like reckless Louisiana party vibe as well. Definitely a party city. Has an aquarium. So definitely worth a visit to Veracruz, if only to go to San Juan de Ulua, which is the Spanish fort. Really historic fort that you guys can go check out. So if you're ever in Veracruz Port, Puerto Veracruz, go check out San Juan de Ulua. That's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, I believe. All right, so moving on. The next city we have is Coatzacoalcos. This is another very industrial city. This is the most industrial city. So we talked about how Veracruz and Tampico were a little bit industrial. Coatzacoalcos, even more so. I think the beach is not very good anywhere near here. And I haven't been to Coatza, but people say that there's just not much going on. There's a couple famous restaurants you can go to with famous Veracruz food. I think the beach is probably pretty dirty. Seems like a decent layout though, but again, you'll want to only visit here in the winter months because in the summer it's going to get crazy humid, which is something I'm going to start commenting on when we talk about beach cities, right? Because when you're talking about a place like Coatzacoalcos and then moving on to the Caribbean, what we're talking about next, it's very seasonal in my opinion, where the weather is very nice from October to March or April in this area of Mexico. So maybe 6 months of good weather. And then the other 6 months, it gets very humid. It's very humid. Not a lot of people can take it year round. Some do. Definitely know some expats living year round down here, but just keep in mind, very humid. It's kind of like Miami in the summer, if not even more so. So that's one characteristic of the Caribbean and the Gulf that is going to be different when we make our way over to the Pacific. So coming along the Gulf here, the next kind of cool place of note is Ciudad del Carmen. It's a smaller city, but reasonably built up, has history, has a malecón, has some beaches right in the city, which is pretty cool. And also has a lot of colonial buildings, so as well as an international airport. So this place is really underrated. I think with the Mayan train, it's going to become more frequented. But for the time being, Ciudad del Carmen, this is a place that not of a lot of tourists go, even though it is pretty reachable from Merida in a day's drive, a couple hours type of thing. Next city we have is Campeche. Here's another city with a lot of colonial history. It's going to have good food. It's going to have some archaeology museums, right? We have, the ancient Mexican fortress or Spanish fortress. And then as well, you're going to have Mayan ruins starting now once you get into the jungles outside the city. So people use Campeche as sort of a jump-off zone to explore Mayan ruins around here. Because now we're kind of getting into Mayan territory. Ciudad del Carmen, sort of, but definitely coming into Campeche. Now it's very Mayan, and there's tons of pyramids out in the jungle here. And the city itself is pretty cool. The thing about Campeche is it doesn't really have beach the same way that other cities here in the Caribbean and in the Gulf do. So it doesn't really have a beach. All the other cities we've looked at previously had a beach. Campeche, not so much. So for that reason, probably not somewhere you want to spend too much time, but definitely cool for a visit. And the Mayan train is supposed to connect here as well. Now, moving our way up the coastline, the next spots that we have are Sisal, still very small, but growing, and Progreso, which is like the big beach town just out from Merida. Is Merida a beach city? I mean, well, it's about a half hour from the beach, so you could almost say it's a beach city, but there is Progreso in and of itself, which is the beach town out here on the Yucatan Peninsula, and this place, is growing as well. I wouldn't quite call this, mini city, I guess you could say, but somewhere with really cool beaches. Probably pretty seasonal, where it has the high season from December to March roughly. So definitely a pretty seasonal place where if you were here in the summer, it would probably be a little bit of a ghost town. But pretty cool place. I'm sure lots of tourist prices and stuff, but cool little town for sure. Now moving on, and the next place we have is going all the way to Cancun. So most people watching this video have probably been to Cancun, big city, over 1 million people. And kind of one of the downsides is just that the beach is not really in the city. There's not a lot of beach that you can get to within walking distance of the city. I mean, if you have a bike, maybe, but still, it's like really not all that convenient. And so that's kind of the dynamic of Cancun and the Zona Hotelera, is that all the beaches are really on this, you know, flimsy peninsula, and then the big city is, you know, a logistical challenge because also they don't really have Uber in Cancun either. Isla Mujeres, by the way, not a city, but it's honestly quite built up. Like there's good Wi-Fi here. There's reasonably good infrastructure for such a tiny island because it's close to Cancun. So Isla Mujeres is cool. I mean, you have a beach kind of in the city that you can walk to. You know, you can get some beers and go walk in the sand. So great little spot. Honestly, I'd rather spend a month in Isla Mujeres than Cancun, most likely. So something to think about. And then as we move down the coast, the next city is Playa del Carmen. Playa del Carmen is one of the fastest growing cities in Mexico. A couple of years ago, 5 years ago, it was maybe 150,000 people. And now I think it's up to like over 250,000 people. It's growing massively into the jungle. And there's some like YouTube videos out there and stuff where you can see the growth of this city. It's been crazy. And why? Why is it growing? Because, well, it's close to Cancun, which is one of the most busy airports in all the Americas. Amazing airport. And Playa del Carmen is basically the next town over from the airport. You can take a quick bus and soon the mine train to get down here. And you can live walking distance from the beach. This is kind of the classic digital nomad city. I'll have to make a dedicated video for Playa del Carmen. But you can get like a really nice apartment here and be walking distance from the beach. And there's tons of good restaurants, things to do. Great city, great city. And on the other side, you have Cozumel. So that's kind of how Playa del Carmen even became a city to begin with. It was just where the port was, or where the ferry terminal was to get to Cozumel. Cozumel was always historically a little bit more important because it's a cool island. And so Cozumel is a big city as well. Someone could easily, you know, spend a month Airbnb in Cozumel or have a retirement home in Cozumel. It's a great little town. It really has a lot of what you need. You are on an island, but it's got that quick ferry to Playa del Carmen. And some of the beaches here are crazy, like in the south and then actually in the north as well. So really good scuba diving, all that stuff. So Cozumel is a good city, especially if you're active with things like scuba diving. Great little city. Now obviously you have Tulum next, which is definitely growing into a city in and of itself, right? Like Tulum started off as maybe like a 15,000 person hippie town, and now it's really, I guess they've decided like, okay, this is going to be another 300,000 to 500,000 person city plus. And they built the airport, and it seems to really be going that way. Like there used to be nothing out here. This used to be all jungle. So Tulum is growing. So I mean, everything really on the Mayan Riviera is growing, and you really have a couple different city options here. And then the last place really is Chetumal. Chetumal, in my opinion, kind of has a lot in common with Campeche, where it's historic and it's pretty built up, but there's just not a lot of beach. So there's really no beach here, which is kind of annoying. But that's the thing about Chetumal. That's why no one really spends time here. Has a pretty cool Mayan museum. And the only thing really of note is that it's on the border with Belize. So sometimes for people that want to go to Belize, coming or going, the buses will kind of bring you here to Chetumal. So kind of a lot of people go here just on the way to Belize. All right, guys, so that completes the tour of the Gulf of Mexico and the Yucatan Peninsula. Now let's jump over to the Pacific coast of Mexico, and we're going to start working our way up the coast. So the first state on our list is Chiapas, and the thing about Chiapas is there's really no city along this stretch. And the first real city on the Pacific coast is Salina Cruz. If you're a surfer, maybe you've heard of Salina Cruz. It's really quite famous for surfing. But other than that, it's quite an industrial place. It is relatively built up, but this is the state of Oaxaca, so it might not have the level of infrastructure you're looking for. So quite an industrial place, lots of surfers. I haven't been myself, but this is the place where if you're not a surfer, you might want to skip it. Now, to get to the next city on our list, we have to go pretty far because these places are really quite small. Puerto Angel, Mazunte, and then you have Puerto Escondido. So Puerto Escondido is really the most significant population coming from Salina Cruz. So what's interesting is really this whole coastline is just almost empty and really quite raw, which is great. But so you have Puerto Escondido. It's growing a lot. You know, it's got an international airport now. It's growing in every direction, and so it's not very hidden anymore. What once was a town of 15,000 people, it's almost like the classic Tulum story. Now they got an airport. Now they're trying to be a 100,000 person city, it appears. So Puerto Escondido, it's historically a hippie town. I think a lot of retirees are moving there as well, and expats really of all age groups. Another empty stretch of coastline brings us all the way to Acapulco. Acapulco famously recently suffered from a major hurricane and it's building itself back up. But this is a pretty, famous historic beach city in Mexico. I think the Kennedys, JFK, famously honeymooned here. Lots of celebrities have been here. And Acapulco will live to see another day. I mean, the geography is honestly just stunning. The coastline, sort of the mountains and how the buildings are built into the mountains. It's a really cool place. It's a growing city. It's a humid city as well, but one that a lot of people really like. So Acapulco, definitely one to put on the list. Always been a little bit dangerous, which is why it's not as famous as maybe as it could be relative to its potential. But this is basically the closest beach city to Mexico City. And that's why it'll always have a place in the heart of Mexicans. We talked about how, the beaches of the Gulf were also reachable from Mexico City. And so that's, just worth noting. One interesting thing about Mexico City is it's really like equidistant from these two coastlines. And so some people from Mexico City will go to the Pacific side to vacation, and some people will go to the Gulf side to vacation. Anyway, moving along, so the next significant city we have here is Zihuatanejo. It's really quite small. It's significantly smaller than Acapulco, but pretty cool vibe. I would say the beaches are definitely cleaner here than in Acapulco. There's less port activity and stuff, so there are cruise ships, but it's a little bit more raw. You have Playa Larga close by as well, which is pretty cool. Ixtapa is also famous, and this kind of second mini area. So a lot of people call it Ixtapa, Zihuatanejo, kind of twin cities that are definitely going to be growing a lot in the future. Then you have Lázaro Cárdenas. Again, this is a port city, a hotly contested port among cartels, I'm sure. And there's really not too much of a expat or civilian population here. It honestly looks pretty built up, but it's really like a lot of workers and so forth. There's not a lot of tourism here. There's not a lot of expats. The beach is, far from the city and doesn't seem to have that kind of beach infrastructure. So give Lázaro Cárdenas a skip. And then the next city we come up on is Manzanillo. Manzanillo in the state of Colima, a lot of people like. There's Facebook groups about expats in Manzanillo. It's a low cost of living. It's beautiful. It's probably safer than Acapulco and some of the other options in the area on this coastline. So safe, chill place, low cost of living, still very humid in the summer, but honestly a pretty cool city where it's small, but it does have a lot of those amenities that people are looking for. You know, it's going to have MMA fighting gyms. It's going to have, I don't know, like whatever kind of infrastructure you need, because there is a couple 100,000 people here. So Manzanillo is definitely an option that people need to be looking at and expect Manzanillo to grow in the future. All right, moving our way up from Manzanillo, the next big city is Puerto Vallarta. And actually, there's pretty frequent bus service between Manzanillo and Vallarta. So if you were backpacking or something, you could easily bus your way on up here. Puerto Vallarta also has one of the biggest international airports of any Mexican beach city, really. So Vallarta is going to have direct flights to Canada, to Vancouver, to Toronto on occasion, to tons of places in the US, like really all over the US. So Vallarta is very, very well connected. And I think maybe the thing to note about Vallarta is like it is a cool city in and of itself, a couple 100,000 people. It's got beaches, it's got mountains and lookout points, and really like a pretty spectacular view from the beach. But when you think about Vallarta, there's really like a lot of smaller options along this bay as well. So a lot of people go to Nuevo Nayarit, where the beach is a little bit nicer and it's like big mega resorts and stuff. Some people go to Bucerias, and lots of expats have purchased houses here in Bucerias. Nice beach. And then the fancy part is Punta Mita. I think like Bill Gates invested here. There's a Four Seasons, there's a St. Regis. So the coastline is spectacular here. And Punta Mita is kind of one of the, high-end areas where, these are mansions, right? These are pretty serious houses and definitely have a sick view. So that's pretty cool. And moving our way up from Puerto Vallarta, there was this small town of San Blas. This was a famous port city or a historic port city and has like some abandoned churches and stuff. But this place has largely been abandoned now. Nothing going on here. But if you were doing the drive, I would check in because there's like some old ruins and stuff like that. It could have been a big city. It could have been a big city, but they decided to abandon it. And then the next big city is Mazatlan, one of my favorite cities in Mexico. Mazatlan is growing rapidly. We're now into Sinaloa state. So Mazatlan is very, very safe. Don't let the reputation throw you off of Sinaloa. But yeah, I mean, it's big time, kind of that cowboys and guns type of vibe. And that is very present in Mazatlan. But it's a city with a lot of culture. Banda music is from here, where they have the big tuba and it's in brass band and it's super loud and party music. And Mazatlan's cool. It has an old centro, like a historic centro with historic buildings dating back to the 17 and 1800s. And then it has Zona Dorada, which is kind of like the upscale, expensive rent, party area, malls, mansions, golf courses. And the coastline kind of keeps growing as well, where they've been growing into Sábalo County. They built this marina here where you can have your yacht and stuff. And there's new construction going all the way up to Playa Brujas, which is also a surfing area. So a lot of people come up here and surf in this area called Cerritos, and lots of retirement homes and retirement communities already here. And as you can see by this aerial shot, more on the way. Like this is all going to get redeveloped, and Mazatlan really is just growing a lot, I think. I think it's really like the next city to blow up. Really pretty moderate climate for a Mexican beach city as well. Stuff to do. You have hiking, you have nature. So great city there. And let's do kind of like a loop of the Gulf. So we'll go into the Gulf and then we'll come out of the Gulf. So going up the coastline of Sinaloa, there's really no other beach city of note. Culiacan is inland. Los Mochis is inland. And there's really no population center of note until you get to Guaymas. So now we're in the state of Sonora, and you have this area called Guaymas, and then this famous kind of beach area called San Carlos. So sometimes people will say San Carlos instead of Guaymas, but it's really like all kind of the same thing here. And this area is now quite drivable from the US. Like if you're living or passing through Phoenix or Tucson or something like that, maybe even Albuquerque, you can get down here to San Carlos, Guaymas, and have a second home here, have a Airbnb, or either you're visiting an Airbnb or maybe you invest in one, something like that. But the beach here is like absolutely stunning, and the infrastructure is getting a little bit American now because this is really kind of getting built up. So you have International Airport, you got Burger King, you got Holiday Inn, you got probably Walmart, you got all that stuff. And it's quite mountainous here as well, and it's getting quite dry. So think of like a dry, mountainous, basically, it's almost like a desert, but on the beach. But it's a pretty cool vibe. So this is honestly probably one of a lot of people's favorite beaches and beach cities in Mexico. Very small, very chill, probably one of your most low-key options on the Pacific, and one that is definitely going to grow in the future. Now, next big population center here we have is Puerto Peñasco, also known as Rocky Point. Now we're even closer to the US, and really like a lot of people from Arizona and the southwestern United States have probably been here or at least heard of Puerto Peñasco, Rocky Point. It was really quite small even 5-10 years ago, but they're building it up massively, just with the number of US retirees and that proximity. And honestly, the beaches are pretty cool here, pretty unique. And even though we're like deep in the Gulf, like the water's still good, there's still fishing and all that stuff. So pretty cool growing city here. All right, moving on from Rocky Point, we make our way around the Gulf, and the next significant kind of population center is this place called San Felipe. I think a lot of RVers and people who do the drive from Tijuana down to Los Cabos are familiar with San Felipe. I think a lot of people from Southern California in general, LA, San Diego, have probably heard of San Felipe because you can come out here and there's RV camps, there's fishing, there's expeditions, there's a fair amount of infrastructure here. So San Felipe is definitely growing, definitely still pretty raw, sandy, deserty, but place worth noting as we make our way down the rather barren Baja Peninsula on the Gulf of California side. So the next population center we have here is Bahia de Los Angeles. Is there an airport here? I guess not. As you can tell, like it is looking still quite a bit smaller and less built up and less organized than even San Felipe was looking more north. But honestly, I think this is a place where there's crazy nature nearby, and a lot of people have been here in one way or another. Anyway, so we'll start making our way down. Basically nothing until Loreto. Loreto is home to an airport as well as this is the Misión. So this was built by the Spanish like way back hundreds of years ago. There used to be these Spanish missions in the Baja California. Loreto has one, and it's kind of become a little bit of a population center. Nowhere I think an expat is really going to want to live, but just somewhere that you kind of like pop in as you're driving down or something like that. Or if you want to do some sick nature expeditions like out on this island. All right, and then moving down, the next big significant city, and really the most significant city on the whole inner piece of the Gulf of California, is La Paz. So La Paz is a pretty big city, 500,000 some odd people, growing very fast, international airport, direct flights to the USA, tons of stuff to do. You got sand dunes, you have whales, you have hiking, you have crazy beaches. Playa Balandra up here is considered one of the most beautiful beaches in the world. So La Paz is an absolutely great spot for expats, for retirees, for families that want to escape the USA, and really probably one of the best beach cities, most balanced beach cities, I would say, in all of Mexico. And really all of, you know, really all of North America. La Paz is probably one of the best beach cities. Big claim. And then as we make our way down, you have the twin cities of Los Cabos. So you have San Jose del Cabo and you have Cabo San Lucas. So San Jose del Cabo is kind of like the chiller, rich area, you know, like a lot of people maybe started in Cabo San Lucas, but then gravitated to San Jose for a more chill lifestyle because they wanted to buy a big house or something like that. So Cabo San Lucas is probably the bigger, more frequented, more famous, more celebrities, more spring break, all that type of stuff. And then San Jose is more chill, retirees. It has its own international airport, actually, which is interesting. Internacional de los Cabos. So there's actually 2 international airports down here, which is pretty cool. So if you're looking to fly into this area, you actually have the option to kind of take a look at 2 different international airports and see, where the best route might be. But these are the twin city of Los Cabos. It's going to be a relatively high cost of living by Mexican standards because everything really has to be brought in either from, by land down the entire Baja California, or perhaps more commonly to be shipped in containers. So a lot of the food is imported. This area, while it probably produces a little bit of food, I mean, it's just not enough and enough variety. So a lot of food here is imported. It's probably one of the only areas in Mexico where you're kind of eating overpriced imported food just because of obviously the geographic complications of being on this insanely large peninsula. So something to consider. When I think of Mexico, I think I really want fresh pineapples. I really want fresh coconuts and watermelon, all that stuff. And I don't know. I don't know the full story on the food situation in Los Cabos, and I guess La Paz by extension, but something to think about. Now, moving up the coast on the Pacific side, basically no cities with over even 10,000 people until we get all the way up to Ensenada. So Ensenada, famous city for Americans. They know it well. You have the Valle de Guadalupe right in here where they have basically like the wine valley of Mexico. Let me search this for you. Valle de Guadalupe. Yeah. So up in here, you got all these different wineries, and it's kind of like the Napa of Mexico. And that's just up from Ensenada. So Ensenada is a growing city, pretty big city. It's honestly been quite dangerous lately, just due to it being near the border. But man, it's an absolutely naturally incredibly beautiful area. It's basically like California, except way, way, way cheaper. And this city will definitely continue to grow, right? I think of a lot of American retirees, a lot of Californians are going to say, why don't I just retire in Ensenada and chop my cost of living, my monthly expenses by more than 50%, right? Because you're going to get a beachfront condo or something here for a fraction of what it's going to cost just up in California. So Ensenada, pretty cool place, famous for fish tacos as well. And then the last but not least final city on our list is Tijuana. Tijuana is a massive city, and it's a cultural hub of Mexico. People are very bilingual here between Spanish and English. Fun place where famously you can come south of the border, you can party, you can drink. There's museums, there's cultural attractions, there's American level infrastructure, and you can come out to the beach along here. You can go golfing, you can rent a condo, and we've posted videos before on Twitter and stuff about how you can get a condo here for a fraction of what it's going to cost in California. Like, what's a beachfront condo cost in California these days? Like, where you're literally seeing the ocean. 5,000 a month minimum, I would have to guess. Could be even 8,000 a month. I mean, I can't see it being less than 4,000 a month. And then you can come down here just over the border and you could pay probably 1,500 bucks a month and get like a direct ocean view. No problem, walking distance from the beach. Tijuana probably has more to offer than that, but I mean, location arbitrage is a big part of why Tijuana exists. So with that, that basically wraps up our tour, our ultimate guide to the beach cities of Mexico. One of my big takeaways from this video was just how many amazing options Mexico has for beachfront cities. And they all have very different cultures. They all have different climate zones. You have different sizes of cities ranging from millions of people to 500K to 250K to 100K. So really, whatever size of city that you want, whatever climate, whatever type of vibe that you're looking for, it probably exists in Mexico. And that's why Mexico is an incredible place. It's a lot bigger than people realize, and I hope you guys learned something in this video, the ultimate guide to beach cities in Mexico. Please be sure to like, subscribe, follow. We'll be putting out a lot more great intel like this.